Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Double Waved Yellows podcast. Tonight, we're going to be reviewing all the action down under from the 2022 Australian Grand Prix. And Hodders and Tyson join me as always. Good evening, gents. How are we doing?
Doing good.
It's all good. It's a Monday night. It's all good.
It's a Monday night. It's always good. But it just seems that Australia was so long ago, and it was only 36 hours.
Only. 5:45 alarms are not good for my body.
Well, we're going to have to get
for
used.
some of you.
Yeah, we're going to have to get used to it for some of the races next year. Hodders, it's nice to be back in Melbourne, and what a race we were treated to.
Absolutely. I mean, the weather was perfect. The new track was perfect. The turnout was huge and diverse, dare I say it as well. But what a weekend we had. It was nice to be back, almost, if you'll pardon the expression, home.
Yeah, absolutely. Tyson, lots of good stuff to talk about as well. Hardly anything negative, really. It's such a good feeling when that happens.
Yeah, it was just a really good weekend in general. Good racing, nothing controversial. Just what you'd like to see.
Absolutely, good stuff. Well, even though there wasn't really much negativity or nothing controversial, we have got loads to talk about. So, Round 3's headlines. Leclerc wins fantastically confident race from Sergio Perez, with George Russell taking his first podium for Mercedes in third. Max Verstappen, a shock DNF, his second one of the season after another Red Bull power unit problem. And probably a really good headline. Danny Rick in front of his home crowd, coming home in P6 for a well-deserved points finish. Before we go through all of the Formula 1 action, although we didn't have Formula 2, Formula 3 or the W Series in action in Melbourne, we have also had this weekend the Formula E Series. Tyson, tell us about it.
Yeah, I do follow Formula E as well, and I'm not going to give a full rundown of it, but just congratulations to Jaguar's Mitch Evans for winning back-to-back races in Rome. He had really good strategy on both days with energy conservation and his timing of using the attack mode, and yeah, both races well worth the watch if you can check them out.
Yeah, and obviously Formula E does have its YouTube channel, so go and have a look at that and watch the race highlights. But not after you've listened to our podcast, because we've got plenty to talk about here. And before either of my guys get the pun in, we're not only a double waved yellows podcast, we've got single waved yellow as well. Hello, everybody. Yeah, a bit of an accident about a week ago. Fractured wrist, so yeah. At least it wasn't both arms, then it would be double waved yellows. And I would have struggled to do this podcast. So anyway, never mind. So we'll get straight into the driver focus. And Hodders, I'm going to let you go first this weekend. So the first of your picks was young K-Mag, Kevin Magnussen.
Ah, yes, K-Mag, the returnee to Haas after a couple of years out. Not quite as high up as he has been in previous races, but respectable nonetheless. His run in qualifying ended up, he posted a time that placed him 17th on the grid. So was out in Q1 this time, upgraded initially to 16th due to Alex Albon's grid penalty from Saudi Arabia. He was later disqualified, among other things. He was out qualified by Mick Schumacher for the first time as well. He was higher up the positions during most of the race, although he did lose the momentum he had, having had to go in to change his hard tyres. So finished 14th, directly behind Mick Schumacher. But for Haas, anything above last is an achievement.
Yeah, that's a fair point, considering what an absolute shocking last 2 years they've had. Tyson, I think it's fair to say, with both K-Mag and Schumacher, a bit of a blip for this weekend, and hopefully that once they get back to European territory, they'll just be back up there, sort of competing either just outside or inside the top 10.
Yeah, especially the pace that they showed in the first two races. It was a little bit disappointing this week. Hopefully it was just a one-off, and when we go to Italy next time, we'll see what the Haas can do again.
And Hodders, obviously, both Magnussen and Schumacher had to be careful this weekend because they only had the two chassis there. I think they estimated Mick Schumacher's crash at Saudi Arabia worth over $1 million, and basically meant that they couldn't afford to send a spare chassis to Melbourne.
Exactly, they had to be careful, and in fairness, they were. They both had some good, safe, clean drives.
Absolutely, good stuff. Tyson, on to the first of your drivers, and ouch is all I'm going to say about your first pick,
Yeah.
Lance Stroll. This might take a while, folks.
Yeah, this just not a good weekend for Lance Stroll. He crashed in free practice three, crashed again in qualifying in a silly incident with Latifi that was honestly pretty avoidable, and then he got penalised in the race itself for weaving on the straight. I will say it was an interesting strategy he had, going for what I'm going to call a quasi zero stop, pitting behind the safety car, getting on the mediums, and then instantly getting off them back onto the hard tyres. And it did look at times like it was going to work. It wasn't a bad idea. He just didn't really have the pace to make it work.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing we noticed when we were watching the race on Sunday. You know, Stroll was right at the back when the safety car was deployed for Sainz's spin. He started on the hards, came in immediately, did one lap of the meters, came back in on hards. And we thought he's going to go to the end here, and I think it was 55 laps to go, and it looked a viable strategy. Hodders, it looked viable, but quite clearly when you look at the data that Pirelli put out and the fact that he was almost certainly going to have to pit again, it was a bit of a risky one, I guess, long term.
It was a risky one long term, although, to give one positive, you've got to give him credit for trying. You've got to give Aston Martin credit for at least giving it a try.
Yeah, and I guess there wasn't really much to lose, given they were right at the back. Tyson, Stroll is one of these drivers that we did mention in our season preview. He needs to prove he belongs there in Formula 1, not because of who his father is and who's obviously helping to bankroll the seat. He needs to prove he's there on pure talent. We've seen it before, but weekends like this are not going to help.
Yeah, he does have those moments, those flashes of brilliance, and if he could just tap into that all the time, then I think there would be a really good driver there.
Excuse me. Yeah, also we hopefully this has just been a bad weekend for both Stroll and Aston Martin, and they can move on when they get back to Europe. Right, so on to my pick now, my first one, and I got lucky. I thought I was in for a really good weekend when I got these three picked out, but one had a great weekend, one had a really poor weekend, one was just indifferent. Max Verstappen qualified second, just 0.3 off pole. Really good duel between Leclerc and Verstappen all throughout qualifying. In the race, the Red Bull was just nowhere near the Ferrari, and then lap 39, shock horror, Verstappen just grinds to a halt on the exit of turn one. Hodders, that was a shocker.
I'll be honest, I think we were, I know it was early in the morning, we're still a bit tired, still half asleep, but we were shocked. My initial thought, I think I said at the time, was, oh, not again. I mean, the fact of the matter is, this is the second retirement second retirement in 3 races. This is something seriously wrong with that car. And Max wasn't livid this time, as he was just rather upset more than anything else. Very downtrodden in interviews afterwards as well.
Yeah, he didn't seem cross, and actually we saw him in the garage a few laps later after he'd obviously got back to the paddock, and he was talking very calmly with mechanics, obviously, what happened, but also we heard from the team radio that he could feel and smell some sort of liquid in the cockpit, which Tyson, that is not a good sign in any circumstances.
Yeah, that's definitely not what you want. And it just seems at the moment the Red Bull powertrain, they've built a glass cannon because it is powerful when it gets going. We saw that in Saudi Arabia, but the reliability, this is probably what it's going to come down to in the end.
Yeah, and obviously they need to be careful because these engine failures will add up to the eventual engine grid penalties.
Absolutely.
Yeah, not helpful. Apologies, obviously, everyone at home for all the coffee. Not that great. Right, Hodders. Someone who also, his first race back, for this series. Someone that we were hoping we were just going to come back in and have a good weekend, but Seb Vettel, oh dear.
Oh dear, and I don't think it was all entirely his fault either. I mean, it is worth noting, I believe, he is the first driver this season to already have to put in a replacement power unit. He had power unit problems in practice, which when you went in by the time of qualifying. Even then, he was still struggling. P18 upgraded due to Alex Albon's grid penalty, followed by his disqualification for not finding a fuel sample. And unfortunately, ended up with an accident on lap 24, bringing the safety car out for the second time in the race, and just a race for him to forget, which is a shame. And it was nice to have him back, but I'd like to hope that when it comes to the European races, he will want to jump back up and spring back from a disappointing weekend.
Yeah, we certainly hope so. Although, Tyson, it was quite funny seeing Vettel getting his laps done on a scooter.
Yes, yeah. That was a pretty comedic moment for the weekend, but yeah, this is certainly not the start to the season Vettel would have wanted, having to miss the first 2 races. He only got an hour's worth of practicing, and yeah, it has just not been good so far.
Yeah.
Hopefully he can back from this and we'll see what he's got left on in the season.
Yeah, but Hodders, Vettel has been very calm, very measured. He realises that these are mechanical problems that they're not his fault, and they know that these do happen at the start of the season, especially with the new regulations in place. It might be that once we get back to Imola, it'll be all good. Tyson, so moving on for sort of the unfortunate drivers that we've all had in our selections, but Tyson, you hit the jackpot with yours. Charles Leclerc, wow.
Yeah, there's just nothing more that can be said. Just a flawless weekend from Leclerc. Pole position, won the race, fastest lap, led every lap from the start to finish, got the whole Grand Slam, and that's put him with a really strong early lead in the Drivers' Championship. He's got 71 points. His closest competitor is Russell with 38. And right now, it's very early days, but he is looking like the man to beat this season.
Yeah, very much so. And Leclerc is actually far enough ahead of Russell that Hodders, even if Russell were to win the race, take fast lap, and win the sprint race at Imola, Charles Leclerc would still be ahead. That is massive.
It really is extraordinary that a driver can be that far ahead. I mean, other than Lewis Hamilton in previous years, of course, but to be that far ahead after 3 races, and even then, having not won all 3 of them, still be that far ahead. And when we're coming up to what is essentially a 34-point weekend next race weekend.
36.
36, I stand corrected. No, I'm quite happily corrected. That's still extraordinary.
Yeah.
It's just, there's not really much more you can say other than the fact that it was a flawless weekend, and what more can you say? He really, I would say, I know it's early days, but at the moment, based on what we've seen so far, and I know there's another 19, 20 races to go, it's his championship to lose at the moment.
Yeah, a lot of people saying that on Twitter, his championship to lose. And Tyson also, this is a fact that we only stumbled across about 10 minutes before recording time. Leclerc becomes the first driver ever to set fastest laps in the first 3 races. That is phenomenal.
Yeah, that is an amazing achievement. I think a little bit to do with that, maybe the fact that the fastest lap gives the extra point now, so there is more incentive to go for it. But yeah, to do that nobody else has done before him, that is incredible.
He's going to be one to watch for this weekend,
Absolutely.
for this season, for sure. And hopefully we do have a bit more of a... it is made a bit more of a battle over the coming few races. My second choice, and thankfully I've gotten my first voice back, thank you very much. My second choice, Lewis Hamilton, qualified 5th. I think he was lucky to get 5th, given that Fernando Alonso, he was on course to set a superb lap in Q3, and also Carlos Sainz, he was about to set his fastest lap when obviously the red flags came out, so of course that lap was disallowed. So yeah, he got lucky in qualifying, but I think he got unlucky in the race. He did finish 4th, but he was so unfortunate with the pit stops in that he pitted and then the safety car came out, which allowed obviously Russell to take a pit stop with less time consequence, I guess. But Hamilton freely admitted that Russell was obviously the better driver on the weekend, and I guess he was glad to get a good haul of points in. Tyson, do you agree with that? I think Lewis is just viewing it as a good haul of points, and I think he needs to at this point in the season.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. He was fortunate in qualifying. He was unfortunate in the race, but these things happen, and we've seen him benefit from it in the past. He knows more than anyone. These things can happen.
Yeah, and Hodders, we will cover this a little bit slightly because it is a general rule we've been reminded of, but I think it is aimed at one person in particular. The race director this weekend putting in the driver's notes a reminder about what the fireproof underwear that the drivers have to wear. It has to be long johns, not shorts, and also a reference to piercings and jewellery. And although the FIA say no, it's a general reminder, there's quite clearly one driver who it relates to.
Yes, and he doesn't. He's already been named, so I don't need to into details who that is. It's pretty clear and obvious.
Yeah, but what is not helping Hodders is that he has quite clearly and blatantly come out and said, I am not adhering to that rule. There are going to be consequences because this is a safety rule in place.
Absolutely. When it comes to jewellery, in almost any sport, when it comes to jewellery and stuff, the rules are there to protect those taking part. Now, I will give mitigation here. Lewis has said that some of those piercings would be difficult to remove on his ears because they're welded in. Okay, fair enough. Deal with that as we come to it. But again, it's a case of they're not an option. They are mandatory and they are there for a reason. And if you flounce it, you're going to get in trouble for it.
Yeah, I mean, how it's going to be patrolled, how it's going to be enforced, we don't know. We will obviously let you know when we know. Hodders, back to you, and your third selection out was Zhou Guanyu, and he had a good weekend.
Yeah, he did. I mean, to be fair, I would actually say that, to be fair, Alfa Romeo as a whole had a pretty decent weekend, Zhou and Bottas included. Bottas still scoring points, wasn't as high as he has been previously, but they're having a good run. And Zhou Guanyu, he was a bit off the pace. He got into Q2, which was excellent. He finished Q14. He was some way off the pace from the other drivers ahead of him in the pack, for the 13 drivers above him, but still very respectable. And in the race, a solid drive. In some cases, he was actually pushing towards the points positions. He didn't quite get there, but again, a P11 in your third race in F1. I mean, I'm very much the opinion that he's very. One thing I do like is on his social media and everything else is he's very positive. He's all smiles. He knows he's there to learn, and he's taking things on board. And he's taking everything as a learning experience, and that's what you want.
Yeah, absolutely. He's going about this in the right way. He's obviously learning from his teammate Bottas. He's learning from Alfa Romeo. He's taking it as a learning experience, which is absolutely the right way to go about this. Tyson, I think it's also fair to say with Zhou, he's not being expected to set the world right with fantastic results every weekend, but so far, so good.
Yeah, he's doing really well for how inexperienced he is at the top level. And Formula 2, he was putting the results in. This season, Formula 1, used it as a learning experience. Maybe in the future we'll see some real results coming from him.
Fingers crossed. We'll obviously keep an eye on him. And Tyson, your third choice, someone who's had a decent weekend, was Esteban Ocon.
Yeah, Ocon, he was pretty quiet during the race, but he did have a very good weekend. He qualified in 8th. He pitted early to get on the hard tyres and then just kept his head down and did what he needed to do. And in the end, he was rewarded with a very respectable 7th place. Can't complain about that at all.
No, absolutely. And Hodders, the early safety cars that we had, it really did shake the pack up on both occasions because of the tyre strategies that were in play.
It really did. I mean, considering I think more than anything else, I think the fact that the tyre strategies are no longer dictated by how you do in qualifying is really helping out as well. In that now you have drivers with almost carte blanche to have whatever tyres they desire, within the bounds of reason and common sense, of course. But I think the fact that we had the earlier safety cars, and when they came in, was actually quite apt. I mean, look at when Vettel spun off, it was around lap 23, 24. That was a perfect time for changing from Haas to mediums or vice versa, and drivers took advantage of it.
And some didn't, which obviously cost them, which we'll obviously talk about in a bit. And my final driver, Fernando Alonso, qualified P10, having crashed in qualifying 3 when he was fastest in Sector 2. We could see the purple times. We thought he was on for something special. But yeah, bizarre qualifying where he's changed down the gears, but then it's just got stuck in 4th gear and it's just pitched him straight into the barrier. So very unlucky there. And then his woes carried through into the race where he had a fairly solid run in amongst the top 10 for most of the race, but the last 10 laps he just plunged through the field, ended up finishing 17th and last. Tyson, what great scenes that would have been to see Alonso, even if it was just provisionally get pole position, but he probably had the pace to be on the front 2 rows.
Yeah, he was on it in qualifying. He was setting purple sectors, and then it just fell apart for him. So we'll never know what would have happened.
Yeah, never know. But Hodders, again, Alonso is keeping the young guns honest.
He absolutely is. So before, he continues to prove us wrong even from pre-season. He's proving us completely wrong. He's come back, and boy, I think we're all pretty glad to have him back.
I think it's the humble pie that's stuck in the back of my throat. I think it's that.
But at the same time, yes, he had a slight fluff in qualifying, but he's got the maturity to move on from that.
Yeah.
The experience shows there.
Yeah, and you can see he was frustrated, but he realised that it's not a driving mistake. It was just one of those unfortunate things. Yeah, it happens. And yeah, we'll move on from it. Right. Right, on to our winners and spinners section, and we've got a lot this weekend because we've all chosen a collective winner, a collective spinner, and our own individual winners and spinners, and some honourable mentions as well. So there's a lot that's gone on this week that's to be both celebrated and laughed at, frankly. Our collective winner, we can't really look much further than the race winner, Charles Leclerc. He absolutely blitzed that race, and the only time Max was getting anywhere close to him was under safety car. Hodders, just a brilliant performance.
There's not much more you can say. He had everything absolutely right. He took the form that he had from Bahrain, from Saudi Arabia, the fact the car was working well, and he just transferred it to the Antipodes and to Albert Park, and it just plain worked. And he didn't put a foot wrong at all.
No, not a foot wrong. And Tyson, we obviously mentioned this off air as well. The wins that he's been taking this year, his performances across the year, he's been really happy celebrating, but he's always maintained very calm about it.
Yeah, and it's really nice to see that, just that maturity in victory. It's kind of refreshing to see someone so humble.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think equally his peers are recognising that, you look in Parc Ferme, Max's high five, handshakes, getting from Lewis as well. And if you're getting that from the two big names of the sport, you're doing a good job. Down the other end of the grid, the collector's spinner, we've said it a few times this weekend, Aston Martin, and I think the only word we can say for this is ouch. They have had a miserable weekend. They've had power unit failures, they've had crashes, they've had penalties. The only time that Aston Martin has been at the front is when it's been the safety car, quite frankly, and that's and even then, I think Verstappen was complaining that the safety car was 5 seconds slower than the Mercedes safety car. So Yeah, Hodders, Aston Martin, they need to turn it round.
They have had a rotten first 3 weeks. First 3 weekends of the season have been absolutely rotten. I mean, yes, Vettel was out with COVID, and that can't be helped, and he's recovered, which is great to see. And I hope he's had no ill effects. But again, they really need to turn around. It's not where they want to be. Not after last season with Vettel having some strong performances.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Aston Martin have got to be thinking, where on earth has all the performance gone from last season? Tyson, I think first weekend we might have said it's something to do with the power unit because all the Mercedes powered cars appear to be towards the back. But it's not. It's not. It just appears to be the performance, or partly the performance of the cars, but also the performance of the drivers. And notably, Stroll has had an awful season.
Yeah, I just have no idea what's gone wrong with Aston so far this season, and like Hodders said, they really need to turn this around because they are dead last in the championship right now.
Yeah, and obviously Lawrence Stroll will not be happy with this one iota. Right, so on to my winner, and for me, George Russell. A really good, solid performance across the weekend, and he actually had a bit of good fortune with the safety car, the second safety car when it came out after Vettel crashed off, in that Hamilton had just pitted, and I think he was the driver furthest in front who hadn't yet pitted. So of course, he's pitted. It only cost him about 15, 16 seconds, and he's been able to come away from Albert Park with his first Mercedes podium. Tyson, a good performance.
Yeah, and he was very fortunate with the timing of the safety car as well. And to get his first podium at Mercedes, that's probably about what you're expecting from Mercedes, right?
Yeah, a good performance from George there. But as for my spinner, and Hoddle, I'll also come to you for comment about this in a minute. Nicholas Latifi for Williams, whatever his performances were last year, yeah, he's had another qualifying mishap. He's had another poor performance for his. I've got to ask you, Hodders, are Latifi's days at Williams numbered?
I mean, based on the first 3 weekends, at the moment they're looking very, very numbered. I mean, bearing in mind, we said before, he's got to buck his ideas up this season as well. There is many a driver in I mean, there's probably quite a few in F2, and I think Tyson can attest that. There are many drivers in F2 who will be absolutely hammering at Williams' door come 2023. So Latifi is he's in deep trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. Many F2 drivers, a few F3 drivers potentially. Tyson, the name Jamie Chadwick was thrown in there as well, but I think it'll be too early for her at this point.
I think, yeah, it would be a little bit too early for Chadwick. I would like to see her in Formula 3 or Formula 2, see how she acclimates herself there first. But yeah, Latifi is just. I don't really know. Has Abu Dhabi spooked him? What happened there? Because he just doesn't seem the same after that.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point because obviously it was the aftermath of that was very unpleasant for Latifi, and
yeah, indeed.
we did mention it in the preview. It just was not pleasant. There's no need for that, and it may well have affected him mentally. And if that is the case, he needs to hopefully get the right support to help him move on from this. Hodders, we'll go to your winners and spinners next.
Yes, and it's one I was considering for a while, and I know Tyson will be pleased about this one. My winner this weekend was a team, and it was the Papayas themselves. It was McLaren. Now, considering that I think it was earlier in this season I had McLaren as a team spinner, it's nice to give the team in orange a good word. I mean, considering where they were in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, McLaren are back where we expected them to be. We expect them to be in contention for winning races. They're not quite there yet, but at least they're back in 5th and 6th where they were. Lando Norris is back to 5th. Danny Rick getting points on the board as well, because he's now on the board in his home race as well, which is good to see. And it just feels like all the little problems or a lot of little problems and issues they had in the first 2 weekends seem to be abating and sort of righting themselves. I don't think they're quite at their best yet, but they're getting towards it, and an improvement's an improvement.
Yeah, I think that's a fair summary there. But Tyson was obviously our resident McLaren fan. We hope that this is just the things of McLaren starting to move back to where they should be, and hopefully not a flash in the pan.
I think cautious optimism is the right word for it right now, because I saw free practice 3, Norris top in the boards. I was like, don't do this to me. Don't give me this false hope. But yeah, I think they definitely benefited from Australia not being as heavy on the brakes where their issues are. So yeah, hopefully they keep up this form going forward.
Yeah, and obviously into the European season now, so hopefully any upgrades that they need to bring along, it'll be obviously a lot easier to add them when they get back to Europe. Hodders, as for your spinner, it's not a driver or a team, it's a drive train, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's the Red Bull powertrains. And once again, they're in the news for the completely wrong reasons. I mean, the fact of the matter is that we've had a driver with a Red Bull powertrain retire for the second, Max Verstappen no less, ending up retiring for the second race out of 3, again with an engine issue, and again in this case it seems with a fuel issue. When you've got fuel, as it turns, I think it was fuel leaking into a cockpit, you've got a major, major safety problem. And the fact that the driver can detect it, not to mention, I think it was mentioned towards the latter part of the race, I remember mentioning it being mentioned actually towards the last part of the race, that Yuki Tsunoda was saying that he was having a few coughs, a few minor coughs as well, and he's already had some bad luck as it is this season. For the Red Bull powertrains, they really need to have a very serious look before we have a serious incident, which we don't want.
No.
But we want to eliminate any possibility of that. And it's not a good state of affairs.
Yeah. I mean, whether it's a fuel line leaking into the cockpit, that has got to be something entirely different. That can't be down to performance. But Tyson, with obviously all the engine development frozen until 2026, it's going to be very difficult to make this a quick fix.
Yeah, and this appears to be a serious problem that needs fixing as soon as possible, because it's clearly a safety issue right now.
Hodders, could it also just be potentially the way Max is driving the Red Bull Power Unit in comparison with Sergio? There could be that in there.
To be fair, it could well be. I mean, when you consider that Sergio had a very, very good race this weekend, he was careful, and he didn't seem to have any problem. Unlike previous races, he didn't seem to have any problems at all. It could well be driving management, but again, it's possibly too early to tell.
Yep, we'll have to wait and see. But obviously,
yeah,
we'll see what comes up, and obviously, Red Bull back at Milton Keynes, they'll be having a look to see what the problem is. Tyson, we're going to move to you for your winners and spinners, and a former Red Bull driver had an excellent weekend, Alex Albon.
Yeah, Leclerc was going to be the obvious choice for my winner, but I felt I had to give it to Albon because it really needs to be given where it's due here. He ran 57 laps on the hard tyres and made the strategy that Stroll was going for work. Brought it home in 10th after being disqualified from qualifying for being unable to provide the required fuel sample. Just a brilliant strategy from him during the race, and he got the last point that was up for grabs from it. So really well done to him.
Yeah, a smart strategy. It's very, very rare to see a set of tyres pretty much go the whole distance. There were a few people asking on social media whether he could have pitted at the end of lap 58, the last lap. And unfortunately, the rules say basically the tyre is considered as used once he exits the pit lane. Unfortunately, the pit exit is after the start-finish line. So he would have ended up completing lap 58 on the hard tyres. And the rules are very clear. If you don't use more than one different type of compound, it is a disqualification. But Hodders, quite rightfully, we should give praise to both Albon and his mechanics and team, because it was a brave strategy. They had to do something different after qualifying. It paid off.
It was, and considering I think it was also one of the only drivers to use the soft full stop in the race itself. Because it is worth mentioning, we didn't mention it before, it was the first time since 2019, I believe, that we had non-consecutive tyres, because we had, I think C5 is the softest, isn't it? C5,
Yeah.
C3 and C2, and almost everyone was using 2 and 3 because the softest weren't going to cut it. But again, it seemed to pay off. They were certainly zippy on the one lap they were used.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point because that's something actually I hope that Pirelli look to do for future races, because you have got a tyre that is capable of putting these phenomenal fast laps in qualifying, and obviously you've also got tyres that are able to do the distance in the race and throw up a bit of strategy in there. That may be something they'll look for in future. I mean, yeah, if we'd got a late safety car, because we were talking about this when we were watching the race,
I think everybody would have done it.
if we'd had a safety car with 10 to go, everyone would have been piling into the pits.
Dive on the softs.
Oh, yeah.
Well, where they could have done, because obviously some drivers might have had to have stacked, some might have decided to take a gamble. It would have really thrown a spanner in the works, which would have been interesting to see.
I don't think we want any more soft tyres after safety cars in the last few laps. Not anytime soon.
Oh, yeah, good point. Let's move very quickly on.
Moving on.
Very quickly, moving on to your spinner of the weekend, Tyson. Someone who got a little bit unlucky in qualifying and then just completely ran out of luck during the race. Carlos Sainz.
Yep, I'm going to the other side of the Ferrari garage for my spinner. He was just very unlucky because he had a very good lap in qualifying 3, but that was interrupted by the red flag, and he just ended up well down the order when that was said and done. Started the race on the hard tyre as well, but it just turned out to be the wrong call. He got a very poor getaway off the line. It sent him all the way down to 14th, and then he spun it into the gravel on lap 2. Just a very disappointing weekend for Sainz.
Yeah, I mean, Sainz was just so unlucky in qualifying because, the lap that was disallowed, it would have put him fourth, but the current rules are, you can't, or your qualifying times won't be allowed to stand if it's under red flag conditions. So, yeah, that's how it works. Hodders, how on earth Sainz did not collect anyone spinning off? I have no idea. That could have been almost should have been an absolute monster of a shunt.
It really was. I mean, I think it was sheer luck more than anything else that he didn't. I mean, I think there were a few nearish misses, but how he didn't collect anyone on that literal spin was miraculous more than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. But, Tyson, we should actually give Sainz a bit of credit because he's had a good season so far, and I think this is just one of those blips.
Yeah, just an unfortunate blip. They will happen every so often, and yeah, I expect to see him back on form again for the next race. Ferrari in Italy.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And we've got a few honourable mentions, and they are all good honourable mentions. And Tyson, will come to you for this one. It was so good to be back in Australia. Their first major sporting event since COVID. 420,000 people through the gates across the weekend, and that wasn't just a record for the Grand Prix. That is a record for any Australian sporting event. So for the country, it was so good.
Yeah, they love their motorsport in Australia, and they turned out in their masses for this one. You could tell they missed it the last few years. Just great to see so many people there.
Yeah, absolutely. And also Hodders, not just a great country, but a great circuit. The changes they have made, getting rid of the old turn 9, turn 10 chicane, just changes, reprofiling some of the corners. It made for a fantastic circuit. And I think probably the proof of that was Perez going around the outside of Hamilton into what is now the new turn 9, 10 chicane. It's like, what? You don't do that.
I know. It was such a fundamental change, and it worked. I mean, we were going to have the 4 DRS zones that was changed 3 for safety, but again, they did work. A tricky circuit to overtake on anyway, but there was some overtaking nevertheless. And
lots of it, which is what we want to see.
Yes.
Alonso, we've given him a sort of a brief mention. Holders, he looked like he was having a good weekend, Yeah, it was unfortunate with the pole, but yeah, he's still there or thereabouts.
Yeah, I think it was just one of those things where stuff happens more than anything else. He's definitely not out of contention, as he's shown the last season a bit. He's still there, and anything could happen, and probably will.
He is there. And the last bit, and we're regularly mentioning this on our podcast. We're occasionally having a go at people about this, but do you know what? Hodders, you've probably seen this. Twitter this weekend, and in particular F1 Twitter, has been so good, so positive, and this can only help promote the support in a good way.
It is, and after some of the absolutely toxic stuff we had towards the tail end of last season, it really is like night and day. It's refreshing. It's almost as if the slate has been new season, wiped clean. And I think it's also been a lot more sporting than it has been of late as well. And I think part of that is due to the current state of the Drivers' Championship as well. It's got rid of all that animosity, and it's all just all around more positive.
Yeah,
and it's what we want to see.
And Tyson, I think following from the Hodders there, it's exciting. There's new rivalries, there's battles up and down the grid. We're not talking about what happens in the steward's office or race control, or to a lesser degree. It's brought the fun back for the sport.
Yeah, and that was exactly what the new rules were designed to do. And we're starting to see it now all come together on the track. We're seeing, as you said, new rivalries. We're seeing the positions jumbled up a little bit. And yeah, it is really fun to watch so far.
Yeah, it's what we like to see. So keep it up, F1 Twitter. We do like seeing that. Surprisingly, we haven't actually got any talking points else to catch up on, because it's been a controversy-free weekend, and the people who have had a bad weekend, we've unfortunately highlighted it in our winners and spinners section. So on to the standings for the championship so far. So after 3 rounds, Leclerc leads on 71 points. Russell in second on 37. So a bit of consistency there has helped. Sainz, despite a poor weekend, on 33. Perez on 30 points. Hamilton on 28. The current championship leader, Max Verstappen, on 25 points. He's nearly 2 wins behind Leclerc, which is not good. Ocon on 20. Lando on 16. Magnussen and Bottas on 12 points each. In the Constructors, Ferrari, the first to hit triple digits on 104. Mercedes on 65. Red Bull on 55. McLaren on 24. Alpine 22. Alfa Romeo, a good start for them, on 13. Haas, fantastic season so far for them, up on 12. AlphaTauri on 10. Alex Albon getting Williams off the mark with 1 point, and Aston Martin yet to score. So, Hodders, it is over to you now, and we're going to find out which of the 3 drivers we will each be focusing on for the Imola Grand Prix. It's not the San Marino one, and I'm not going to give the full title, because we'll be here until next Monday when we try to read it
simple.
out.
We will just keep it very, very simple. Once again, I have random.org ready to hand. I've already got the numbers in hand that we need to avoid, because, as is the rule, we do tend to try and avoid, where possible, drivers we've had the previous race weekend. So I will fire at random.org. And we're back to our usual regular order. So it's Matt's drivers first. And the first number we have out, incidentally, one of the winners this weekend, number 16, that's Alex Albon.
Ooh, nice. I'll take that. Yep, happy with that.
I would too.
And just for reference, so the numbers, they correspond to the championship position in the Drivers' Championship. Obviously, Charles Leclerc would be 1, George Russell will be 2, etc., etc.
And for clarity, although Nico Hülkenberg is currently 19th in the standings and Vettel is technically 21st, Vettel is 20 and Latifi is 19. And obviously, if a driver is indisposed for whatever reason, then the substitute driver will still count for the draw.
Mm-hmm.
Second number out, not bad going. Number 4, that is Sergio Perez.
Checo.
Of Red Bull. Hey, we're doing quite well. It's been quite kind, these numbers today. Not had to do any repeats yet. Hey, and third.
I said that.
I know we normally do sort of alternate, do 3 in blocks of 3, because I've already started that. You've got the podcast favourite to finish your 3, Matt. Yuki Tsunoda.
Hey, I'll take that. Yep, so Albon, Checo, and Tsunoda, sort of a mix of current and past Red Bull drivers. Hopefully their powertrains are all good for Imola.
Yes. And we're over to me for the generation. And the man we've been talking about saying his days were numbered. My first is number 19, a certain Nicholas Latifi.
Ouch!
Well, somebody's got to have a clanger. And next number, I might go musical here. It's number 8, and that's Lando.
Yay!
Hey. And third number, owing to his nationality, I shall quote a fellow radio presenter of mine of Chateau Neuf de Pape. It's Pierre Gasly, the Frenchman. His phrase, not mine. Other wines are available. So we're over to Tyson's 3, and good start. Number 10, that is Valtteri Bottas. That's a good draw to have.
Do you pick 2 drivers out, or 1 or 3?
I did. I inadvertently started at 3. I did the block of 3 inadvertently. I normally go 1 at a time, but unfortunately I've started on 3, so I'm continuing as I mean to go.
Oh dear!
You start, so you'll finish.
Yeah.
As Magnus Magnuson would say, no relation to Kevin, different spelling. Normal service will resume on the next podcast, I assure you.
Yeah, I'll actually have my voice back.
Second number for Tyson is not too bad. Number 17, Mick Schumacher.
Okay.
Doing all right for Haas so far. He's finished every race, and he even outpaced Kevin Magnussen last weekend. And you'll like this one. Well, you're a fan of McLaren, aren't you, Tyson?
Yeah.
You've got Danny Rick. You've got finish off. So, just to confirm, Matt has got Alex Albon, Sergio Perez, and Yuki Tsunoda, podcast favourite. They'll still remain neutral. I've got Nicholas Latifi, Lando Norris, and Pierre Gasly, and Tyson's got Valtteri Bottas, Mick Schumacher, and Danny Ricciardo. So, pretty good mix there.
A nice eclectic mix of drivers there. So that is all good. So yeah, I think actually that pretty much sums it all up from us. So not really many in terms of the talking points. I think really one of our final thoughts, and it's literally Hodders, Australia, a great place for a race.
And it was a great place for a race. And one final thought for me that I didn't mention before, and this was pleasing. I was reading the Guardian, whatever your other papers are available, and in that article they mentioned the increased diversity of fans at Albert Park this last weekend. Whereas previous years the number of female fans there was around 25%, last weekend it was more like 40%.
Excellent stuff.
Always a welcome increase.
Yeah, we are all for increasing diversity in motorsport, no matter where it comes from, whether it's the fans, whether it's the to do with the running of the sport, the teams, and fingers crossed, sometime soon the drivers as well. Tyson, anything from you?
All I'm going to say is, you thought the scenes were something in Australia. The Tifosi, it's like a religion for them. And they have Charles Leclerc in a race-winning car. There will be scenes if he's on the top 7.
It's going to be a fun weekend.
Tifosi will go nuts. I don't think the Tifosi have had the opportunity to be in the Imola circuit for the last couple of years. So yes, the expectant Ferrari fans, and I mean, let's face it, it's also been quite nice to hear the Monegasque and the Italian national anthems. I think, Hodders, you've called it something like a mini opera. Just listening
the Italian opera does sound like it's straight out of an opera, and I'll say this much: the Italians absolutely adore singing it. And I think I class the Monegasque hymn as a march, but it's a fun one.
Absolutely,
it's got a bit of energy
so well.
Oh, it does. They
does.
Do. Yeah,
they complement each other well.
Yeah, probably better than the German and Italian national anthems, but I'll just leave that there. Hodders, Tyson, thank you very much for your company as always. Great stuff today. Actually, thanks for helping keep me going, because I've been obviously a bit bunged up and a bit broken as well. But hey, we get through things. Of course, don't forget to give us a follow on Twitter, DWavedYellows. Give us a like and a subscribe on here. Leave us a comment. As always, from all of us, be good, be safe, be kind. We'll see you in a couple of weeks' time for the Imola podcast. Bye.
See ya.